Hello and welcome to this week's ARK video on map development. This week we're going to create some static meshes and show how to import them and use some of the materials inside the game. Within our game we have a few areas where in the past I've mentioned we might want to create our own mesh. Now I've gotten a few questions about it, so I figured I'd do an entire video on it. Today I'm going to create two meshes, one of which is a static mesh for a river, so much like the one here, and another is a rock, just so we can get two different ideas on how we can use and implement static meshes into the ARK map. The first thing we need to do is decide what we want, where we want, and we've done that. Then we need to go to Blender or another 3D modeling software that you're going to use. I'm going to use Blender because I've used it a lot recently, more so than Maya. And I've set up this scene that just has a regular cube in it. Now, depending on how much detail you want to do with your model, you can make this as high poly or as low poly as you want. You can implement a normal mesh and all that jazz. You can do all of that in the Unreal Engine. But for today, I'm just doing this for illustrative purposes, so I'm going to make a simple boulder and a flat river. Now, this isn't really intended to be a Blender tutorial, but I will try to go through what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the top face and just extrude it up, just so I can get a little more depth here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the sides, and we're going to bevel the sides, just so I can get a more cylindrical shape. I have all four sides selected. Control B to bevel. So now I have a more cylindrical shape on the sides. And I'm just going to make a relatively simple boulder. So select the top face. I need to be in face mode. Now this is a square-ish cylinder. We need to add some faces to just make it look a little more off and, you know, not planned. We're just going to move some of these faces around to make it seem a little bit less natural. Again, I'm just going to add a slight bevel to everything to make sure there's no sharp points. And we have a rough boulder. I'm not trying to sell this boulder or anything, so I don't particularly care if it's not the best boulder in the world. This is really just for illustrative purposes. So we have this boulder, and we go out of edit mode into object mode. We select our boulder. Oops, that is not what I wanted. And I hit Control A, and I'm just going to scale it. Now, before we export this, what we're going to do is we're going to go into edit mode, and we're going to select all the faces, hover over it, hit U, and hit Smart UV Project. Now, what this is going to do is going to cut out all the faces, and if we go into our UV editor, we can see all the faces of the boulder have been put on a 2D plane here. And if you were doing the materials yourself, that would be fine and dandy, but we're not. So we just need to make sure that we have that UV there. So when we come to edit here, we scale it. Export is FBX. So now that we're in here, we're just going to import the actual boulder that we made. And the only thing that's really important here is to have this auto-generate collision checked. We don't need to import materials or textures, as we're going to use the ones that are inside the ARK dev kit already. So we hit import. We have this boulder. We can drag it into our scene. It's a terrible looking boulder. That's okay. The shape of it doesn't really matter. It's just to prove a proof of concept. It's not something I'm actually going to use while building the world. And then we come down here on its details to its materials. We're going to search something like, I don't know, cave or rock or something like that to find a material. And how about cave rock? Yeah, that looks good. But as you can see, we've imported this cave rock material onto the boulder itself. And it looks fine. It's not great. It's not really supposed to look great because I spent 15 seconds making it. But, you know, if you wanted to have a little boulder sticking out that used the material, that's a static mesh option that we have that we probably won't use all that much, because there's already decent enough rocks and cliff faces in the ARK dev kit. But the one we will end up using more if we go back to Blender is we're gonna create a plane. We're gonna put some cuts on this plane because we want to turn this plane into a river. All right, so we have this plane, and this is a plane because it's supposed to be water. So this is, you know, we're gonna make a river out of this. What we're actually gonna do is I'm gonna take these four sides, we're gonna drag them down, sort of like how we're making a river. And we might want to bend in our river or something like that. Our goal is not to make a river that looks exactly like the coastline. We can move the area in the Unreal Engine up and down, like right on the shoreline, like this. So we just need to make something that fits the rough shape of this river. So, you know, let's zoom out a little bit and take a look at our river. So if I'm going to make something that fits on this river better than ultimately what we have, then I'm going to make something that vaguely matches this shape as a river. So at the end, we sort of cut this way, back to the waterfall. I'm just going to select all these horizontal faces. I'm going to move them way back because I'm going to try to orient this like how we have it in the actual Unreal Engine. So I've done this little cut here. Now we need to make this area here. So I'm going to shift click away the ones here. Don't need the scale. Make these a little bit bigger. And then we're going to pull back. Select our last view. Pull back. So we've made something. If you were actually going to put this in your game, you would spend a little more time on making sure that you're covering it. But our goal here isn't to actually make an exact replica of the river. We're supposed to make something that'll fit underneath the terrain asset and that we can make look like a river, right? It's all about tricking the player into thinking that they're in a river. So we don't actually have to have exact shorelines or things like that. We just have something that can fit underneath the raised exposed terrain. So I'm going to select every face, create a UV map of it. We'll hop back out to edit mode, and we're going to export it into as an FBX. This is a river. So when we come in here to import, we just need to select our river, import that. And again, we're not importing the materials or textures. We just want to auto-generate collision. We'll turn it off when we use it as a stream. But for now, we can leave it on in case we ever want to use this texture for something else. So we have this static mesh here. We can rotate it to sort of match the river. And we'll scale it up so we get something that we actually want here. And again, all we're going to do here, I'm actually going to select this water. Let's see, let's go on to our rivers and waterfall. And we are looking for a lake water plane. So we've taken away all of our water planes. You can see when I hide this river, there's nothing left on our spot. We're going to go down to our material. We're going to look for water. I don't really want cave water. And it crashed, as it sometimes does. But I'm going to select this river here. I hadn't saved, so I had to redo it. I ended up selecting AB_LakeWater Island. Sometimes you just have to like find the right one until it ends up working for you. So we're just going to drag this river plane into sort of the location it needs to be. So just like before when we were placing water planes, I'm not really sure why it's so far below the water plane, but whatever, we can work with it. Now, this might be a point where you go back and adjust your mesh just a little bit to make it fit just a little bit better. But I think this is moderately acceptable. It just sort of shows proof of concept. You can even go in with your slopes and carving tools and make the riverbed just fit it a little bit better if it's close. But I think this is acceptable for now. I'll need to add a volumetric mesh or a volumetric physics editor underneath the river so we can swim in the water just like we can in the ocean. But this is just sort of like a simple guide on how to create your own river meshes and things that you would need to do to learn how to do that. So just to briefly reiterate, we went into Blender, we created this mesh which was close enough to our river. It doesn't have to be precise because we can make it just like before, come out into the plane of the underneath the terrain, just like we did before. So we have it up here and we have it back there. That's fine. We just have to make it close, and then once it's close, we apply this material for, lake water or something to make it look like water. So now we have the same material up here that we have down here. We have our waterfalls, and the only thing we really have left to do is to add volumetric physics editors to these two areas, and they should act and perform just like when you go underwater in the ocean and you're underwater. I hope this has helped. If you have any questions on creating static meshes from, a boulder over here to creating a river static mesh that you can use as a way to have your own river that's unique and not a copy from a different map, If you have any questions, as always, let me know in the comments below. I'm more than happy to help. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. It really helps us out a lot. And hopefully we'll see you next week.